Hello, friends. I just decided kind of spur of the moment today that this would be kind of a fun thing to do. I decided to come back and visit my mother. My sister still lives in the next town. My brother lives in Springfield, Missouri, but he is coming here tomorrow, driving here tomorrow to see me and the rest of the family for the weekend. I still have aunts and uncles here on both my father and my mother's side, and unfortunately, I miss seeing my grandma, who I came home last to say goodbye to 3 years ago, and she passed on and graduated to heaven at the age of 101. So every time I come back, it seems like there's less people to see, but always a wonderful time of reliving memories. My mom still lives in the same house that Dad built for our family when I was just getting ready to go into kindergarten. And he built this house, only a 900 and some square foot house, but it's on 2 lots here in Dakota City, Nebraska, a corner lot. And they always thought they'd build a bigger house someday, but they just never got to it. And Mom still lives in this home with 1 bathroom. And funny how we grew up with 3 kids and never thinking anything about 1 bathroom. I don't remember there ever being a waiting line. Now we all go, how did we make it with 1 bathroom? Don't we get spoiled here in America? But there are so many things. She has a bathtub but does not have a shower. And you know, they grew up on farms out in the country where they had wash tubs. So to have just a nice bathtub is fine for her. My husband and I are going, we got to go somewhere and take a shower because we're just not used to that. But I love this house. I had so many memories here, obviously. Growing up here as a child, going through kindergarten, going through grade school, and then by the time I went to junior high, we were being bused. This town was a town of, I think, 400 or 500 when Mom and Dad moved here. But then they put in a beef packing plant that at one time was the largest one in the world. I think it's been surpassed now. But when they put that in, the population suddenly went to about 1,000, and I think it stayed somewhere around 1,000 to the 1,200 population mark for a number of years. So the next town about 2 miles away is South Sioux City, Nebraska. That's where they bused us when I went into junior high and then high school to go to school there. And the Missouri River passes between South Sioux City and Sioux City, Iowa, and North Sioux City, South Dakota. So we sat very close to the border between all 3 states. So I was here when I learned to drive, here when I went on my first date, here when I first went to school, here when I graduated from high school. So to have a mom in the same house and Dad up until he went to heaven oh my goodness, I believe it's this month, and I believe it's been about 11 or 12 years ago now. But it provides a lot of security for kids. When you come home and nothing has changed, everything looks the same, everything is the same in the drawers, and we don't live in a society much like that anymore, as my kids are all over the country from Alaska to Florida, and every generation gets more and more spread out. But it's fun to come home to the Midwest. This is a place where I'm going to show you some scenery here eventually, but we joke that I've always said Nebraska is 2 things, football and corn, and the last few years pretty much just corn. But we're going to make a comeback in football. But you can about see into the next state here, flat, 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 until you get close to the river. Just a few miles away, there's some bluffs along the river. But other than that, you keep going south, like to the next town, Homer, the big town of Homer, Nebraska, 500 people, where I also lived when my kids were small. But you can just see forever in these Great Plains state. But I just thought some of you might think this is kind of fun, since I'm back here on vacation, to kind of see my mother's house and a few things. So I'm gonna turn around here and just show you. Oops, did that wrong, didn't I? Here, we'll show you a few things here. Her house, that's our rental car out there, but this is the house I grew up in. And I see we have a squirrel out there in the yard, and there's some of the trees around here, and just a simple house. And I remember thinking it was really fun to come out on this picnic table with my friends and have a little picnic, and just a single car garage. There is my mother coming now, and none of you have ever seen her. This is my mother, Rosaline Rich. I say hi to everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Mom. And so these are our Midwest beginnings. And I'm going to sit down here on the picnic table here for a moment and just talk to you about the importance of family and some tradition that's being eroded very quickly in this great nation of ours. You know, growing up here and then having very godly grandparents that stopped and picked me and my little brother up and took us to church every time the doors were open from the time I think I was about 2 years old. The interesting thing was that when Grandma and Grandpa had their 50th wedding anniversary, I was the MC for it. And I remember a blizzard blew through that day. It was May 1st. I think their wedding anniversary was actually April 30th, but because they wanted it on the weekend, they did it on May 1st. It had been 70 degrees the day before, and a blizzard blew through. We had snow everywhere. It knocked out the power to their anniversary celebration. We didn't have any instruments. We didn't have a microphone. I had to shout loud. But it's so funny that I learned so much emceeing their anniversary and talking to some older people that were still alive who had been their neighbors and relatives. And I found out that my grandfather, who had always wanted to have a farm, his own farm, and he reached a place where he finally found a good deal on a farm and could buy it. But it was on the South Dakota side of the Missouri River. And he said, I can't stop and pick Debbie and Randy up for church if I move there. And he said, that's too big of a sacrifice. I guess I just won't ever have a farm. And when I found that out, they had never told me that, but I thought, wow, that is awesome. Did you know my brother is also in the ministry, the brother that will be here tomorrow? He is ordained through the Assemblies of God and works for Convoy of Hope. And so Grandma and Grandpa's sacrifice really paid off. But, you know, I was just thinking about the holidays and the aunts and uncles and the cousins who would come over for Christmases and Thanksgiving and all of those things. And how now as families are so spread out, you just don't see that happening much anymore. But again, I am so very thankful for traditional values and people who believed in old-fashioned, your word is your bond. Even the people who didn't know Jesus, even the people who weren't born again, believed that your word is your bond. If you say something, you mean it. You don't lie. You're faithful to your spouse. My dad didn't come to the Lord till right before his death, but he would have never thought of cheating on my mother. I mean, he had such high morals. I remember him telling us when we were young, you know, you ever sleep with somebody before you're married, you ever drink, you're out of this house. And he didn't do any of those things. And just good. You know why the Midwest and so much of the country had those kind of morals even when they weren't even born again yet? Because there was a remnant of the godly foundation of this nation and the 10 Commandments and people before them that did know the Lord that taught these things, and people grew up with some knowledge of Jesus and some knowledge of right and wrong and some knowledge of conviction and being sensitive to your conscience. And now a few generations down, we are so far removed from that. Do you know, I remember my parents making this statement. My mom probably doesn't even remember it, but the things that stick out to you as a child. I remember we had a neighbor somewhere around here, and I think she had gone through a divorce or something. And I remember my parents kind of whispering, but I overheard them, and they said, that man's car was parked there all night. And my goodness, she better hope the welfare system doesn't hear about that, or she will lose her welfare if she's sleeping around and not married. And I thought, my goodness, now today that's the only way you get welfare is to live like that and to have children out of wedlock. And I'm not judging people who have made mistakes in life, but I'm talking about the deterioration of society from everybody whispering, and I'm not even saying gossip and those things are right. That's not my point. My point is people used to, if one person did something like that, the whole town would be like, oh, now everybody just thinks it's okay to live like that. But that is what has made such a difference in America. America used to be a place that believed in some sort of morality and family values, and now people don't know who their parents are. They don't know when they're coming home. Mom and dad are on the same drugs, so of course that's all we know, so we do it too. And all the broken homes, and your heart just breaks for what used to be. And I think the Midwest was known for just hard workers, a lot of Scandinavian people. Well, we have a real mixture, of course, of culture all over this nation, but on up through the Dakotas, people who came over to claim their land and farm and do whatever it takes to move out the debris and get that soil working. And there was a work ethic here. There was a loyalty of somebody's. I would hear the stories even as a child of somebody's barn burnt down. The whole county would come out and rebuild it or rebuild their house. I mean, that's the way people used to work together. Now people don't even know who their neighbors are across the street. I just think it's sad. But when I come back home, when I'm just coming down the interstate from the airport in Omaha to start heading 90 miles north of there to this place, when I start seeing the barns and the windmills, it just brings you that sense of, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. And this is probably one of the least scenic places of any place I've lived in the country. And you know, just there isn't a lot to sightsee. You don't have the mountains, you don't have the sea, and it has some of the most rugged temperatures. I tell people, you live in the Midwest, you can live anywhere in the country. That's why I've been okay in Alaska. That's why I've been okay in Florida. Because, my goodness, in the summer, it can be 105 with 98% humidity. And in the winter, I can remember some winters, especially when my dad went to Vietnam when I was 12 years old. He came back when I was 13. His Air Guard unit that he was a civil service tech sergeant in, and he eventually became chief master sergeant. It was activated, and he went to serve it. I mean, he went to work as a civil person, and he came home saying, I've been reactivated back in the Air Force, and our whole unit's going to Vietnam. It was a shock to us. I'm 12, my brother was 8, my little sister hadn't been born yet, and of course, it was devastating to us, listening to his tapes every night of saying, I've got to go now, mortar's coming in, and I got to go and you know, get in the bunkers. And thank God he made it home okay. But, you know, you wonder, Dad and other people laid down their lives for our freedoms that are being eroded faster than we can say freedom. And what was all that for if we just let it die? But so before I got off on Dad going to Vietnam, trying to even remember what I was talking about before that, but just these Midwest morals and these Midwest, the hard work ethic. But I come home and I see it's changing here like it's changing everywhere else. But there was something here when you just are walking down these quiet streets of Dakota City. I used to be able to ride my bike, go anywhere. Nobody would think about children being nabbed. I would walk to piano lessons about 5 blocks away. I walked to catch the bus to school every day about four blocks away. Oh, I know where I was. I was talking about the temperatures. So I remember those couple of winters when Dad was in Vietnam. It was especially hard on Mom because here she is alone, and we had some of the worst winters, snow everywhere. My grandpa came and helped shovel, but we were used to several feet of snow, below zero, I think, for a couple months at a time, some of those winters. So I've said, well, some of the winters I had in Alaska were no worse than in Nebraska, and some of those hot, humid summers in Florida were no worse than the summers in Nebraska. So if you live here, and it's funny, the people who live here, I've heard them talk all my life, like, I wouldn't live out in the West Coast with those earthquakes. I wouldn't live in Florida with those hurricanes. And we had tornado warnings, I think, about the whole month of March, April, May, and June that I lived here every year. And I've had a giant twister chasing me down the highway. I was trying to make it to Mom and Dad's house as I saw that tornado coming and all the cars in the ditch. Got here, Mom and Dad weren't home. I had to go to a neighbor's house and go down in the basement with them. But so every place has its own stuff. But I thought if you can live here between the tornadoes and the cold winters and the hot summers, you ought to be able to do it anywhere in the world. Maybe that was tough training for me becoming an international sort of missionary evangelist going to the nations. But I just thought this might be fun for some of you to see my parents' house and see my mother there, who's a little bit shy about being on camera. Good thing I didn't really inherit that, or I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm doing. But so I've been having a good time meeting with relatives, and I think tonight they're actually throwing me a little bit of a early birthday. My birthday's in April 2nd, but since I'm back here now with family, gonna have a little bit of a birthday dinner tonight out with a family, and so I'm gonna sign off from here. But I guess the main thing I want to leave you with is the Bible talks about honoring our parents. It talks about that is the promise. We have a promise of a long life when we do that, and it's good to come home and remember the good memories and remember the things people sacrificed to give you. And you know, I grew up never thinking we were poor. Our last name was Rich, and I felt like I was one of the best dressed kids in school, and we always had enough food. We had a nice vacation in the summertime, usually out to California. I never knew we lacked for anything. Wasn't until I was older and realized what my parents made or didn't make that I'm like, wow, we didn't have much at all. But they never talked about that. They never mentioned that. And just the stability I had in both parents loving each other, a solid marriage, and just the morality and the strict discipline, very strict, but I'm thankful for it. It is something else. I might save that for another video sometime that you see lacking in this generation. But there's a whole lot that I am so thankful for, and it was a good place to grow up. Good place to play softball, good place to go to school. Was a cheerleader at South Sioux City in my freshman year, and on the drill team, and all those things, and it was a good place. So today you're getting a little bit of a taste of the Midwest, and my mother sitting over there not wanting to be filmed, but I tried. At least you got a glimpse of her. She was always a beautiful woman who always looked young for her age, and I was always so proud. Everybody said I looked just like my dad, and he was a nice looking man, but I'm like, no, my mother has that darker complexion, those big brown eyes, and I got Dad's blue eyes and that Irish reddish complexion, but it's funny, when we've been going out to some restaurants, I've met some people who say, wow, I used to think you looked just like your dad, but I see a lot of your mom in you now. And so it's just all kind of fun. But thank God for families, and thank God for heritage. And you know what I should have showed today? I should have asked Mom to get out her picture. I have a copy at home. But I have a heritage of 7 grandmothers still being alive until most of them were alive till I was like 12. But in that picture, I was 2.5 years old, sitting with my mother and my 7 grandmothers. And when I say grandmothers, I had several great-grandmothers, great-great-grandmothers still alive, because everybody got married back then, like when they were 17, 18 years old, and some of them were about 100 years old. So I had greats, great-greats, and they did a newspaper article that said 10 reasons little Debbie may be spoiled, because I had 3 living grandfathers. But do you know what? All of those grandmothers, except 2 Irish Catholic that came over from Ireland, all the rest were Pentecostal grandmothers. I know, praying for preachers in the family. They probably didn't think it'd end up being the girl. But there is always a heritage somewhere of somebody in their prayer closet praying for the future generations, thank God. And I bet some of them never would have dreamed that one of those from the generation would take the gospel into the ends of the earth, into now 39 countries. And I'm thankful for praying grandmothers and great-grandfathers. And so don't ever think, even if you're not seeing it immediately in your children or grandchildren, that it isn't going to be passed down to further generations. We have a responsibility to instill the gospel into the next generation and the next one after that, and to be praying for our heritage. And I'm so thankful for those grandmothers. And I'm looking at some of the people who've joined us. Thank you, Ruth, Kristen, Kelly. Kelly, thank you. I know I got to get back to doing this. First time I've done it since you were with us, and just taking the time between getting ready for this trip and recovering from revival. We've been overly busy, but I told my mom I was taking time out today to do another one of these from here. And thank you, Kelly, saying you walking Holy Ghost Bible School. I appreciate that so much. Dina, hello. Miss you and Bud more than I can say. And wow, I have a friend, Belinda Barge. She was actually one of my closest friends in grade school from this town, and I've kind of hooked back up a little bit with some of these people on Facebook, so this is so cool. Now I got people joining us from Norway. Jan Roar, thank you so much, and all kinds of people, so this is just really, really cool. Victor and Deanna, thank you. Oh yeah, you're celebrating your birthday too this month. I remember that, Deanna. And just others joining us. This is awesome. I promise you guys, I'm going to try to work on doing this more often. I don't know how often back here meeting different family for breakfast, for the noon hour at night, but if not many more of them here after I get home. I'm going to try to do this at least once a week, maybe every other day or so. But I love you all, and God bless you all. And now you see where I came from. You know what? Smith Wigglesworth's house was famous someday. Maybe this one will be famous someday. I'm just kidding. I'm not putting myself on the level of Wigglesworth at all. But if nothing else, when we do my big 25 years in ministry celebration in August coming up, in fact, remember, I'm inviting you all to that, August 7th through the 12th. We have now secured a building for that in Aberdeen, and it'll actually be 26 years, but I forgot to celebrate it last year. So we're combining it with our Northwest Ablaze. And so when we do that, maybe we'll take a little bit of this video showing the house I grew up in. And I tell you what, when you start flying the world and doing the things I've done, and some massive crusades, and being interrogated in Vietnam, that's quite an experience. Knowing my dad went to Vietnam in the service, I never dreamed that years later I'd go back there as a missionary evangelist and be interrogated by the communists for 3.5 hours. But thank God he was with me. And having my life threatened in Uganda, and having to escape a road blockade, and some of these other wild things. Who would have dreamed, a girl growing up in Dakota City, Nebraska, you had this, we had meals at the same time every night, like clockwork. 5 o'clock is when we ate. You just knew if you were out playing or with friends, you better be at that table at 5 o'clock. And that everything was very predictable. We go on vacation at the same time every year. This is what we do every day. I always say I think I had the most predictable life. Nothing was ever out of place. It always had to be put back in it. But to go from that to live in the lifestyle I've had to live, very unpredictable, ready to flow at any moment, change at any moment. I mean, that wasn't in my upbringing. That wasn't in my natural personality as far as what I would have inherited family-wise. But God had other things in store. And I was even the adventuresome one as a kid, always wanting to come out and act and do some sort of a little skit for mom and dad's guests. I think I embarrassed them most of the time. I was a little unlike the rest of the family, but I think God was just getting me ready for the call of God in my life. And so this has just been kind of fun to be able to do this today. Love you all. God bless you. Until next time. Bye.